What's up, Airsofters? It looks like we are live for today. So I just wanted to say, I hope that everybody has been enjoying their week. It's been weird with everything that has been going on lately, but I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes before we actually dive into the topic at hand. Today, we're going to be talking about Milsim players versus Speedsoft players, my opinions on the two styles of Airsoft that you can play, and really why I think they're more similar than more people give them credit for. I hear a lot of people that just say that they outright don't like one type of airsoft or they don't like the other kind, whatever it may be. But really, I think that they're very similar. But we're going to wait just a couple of minutes before we dive into the topic at hand. I just want to ask, how is everyone doing right now? It's been kind of a weird couple of weeks. New York is in full blown. If you don't have to be to work, don't go to work. So the adjustment for me personally has been kind of weird, having to adjust from going out to school every day to doing all of my work here at home. It's actually funny. I've been using all this YouTube equipment to do my schoolwork. Which has kind of paid off. I'm a broadcasting student, so having all this camera equipment actually came in handy for something that's going to be a little bit more practical. But again, I am just waiting a couple of minutes, waiting for the lobby to fill up a little bit more, I guess you could say, before we dive into the topic at hand. For those of you who are watching, make sure to let me know how you are doing down in the description below. Hey, Steven, how are you doing today? So today's video is a live stream, obviously, because you're watching it right now, because I'm working on something that's a little bit different. One of the one of the things that I really want to do is experiment. I think it's good for me as a creator because first off, it helps fight off boredom and make sure that like YouTube isn't as much of a grind, if that makes sense. But at the same time, it's just different experiences that I want to try doing out there. So next week's video, yes, next week I said there will be a video. It's going to be different than anything else that I have published here before. But yeah, why don't we dive right into today's topic? And that is talking about Milsim versus Speedsoft because I feel like that's one of those like hot button topics. It's like talking about politics in the real world. Hey there for everyone who's joining. We're just getting started right now, so you didn't miss anything. But like I said, Milsim versus Speedsoft feels kind of like politics in real life, like Republicans versus Democrats for us here in the US. But realistically, I think that they're not that different. And we're going to be doing this topic and going into a little bit of Q&A later if we have more time. So, realistically, I don't think that they're very different. And as someone who considers himself to be more of a milsim type player, I see the advantages that speed softers have. So what I mean by that is there's really three things that I want to talk about. It's going to be the tactics of players, it's going to be the gear that they use, and also the guns that they run, because I feel like that's kind of the three things where you notice the most difference between players. And I think the most substantial thing, the thing that I notice and what I try to adapt into my milsim play style from Speedsoft, is the tactics and really aggressiveness and teamwork that they use. Now, Milsim versus Speedsoft presents its own unique challenges because in a large scale Milsim event, so we're talking about American Milsim, Desert Fox events, Milsim West, these bigger games like that, there's a lot that you have to deal with. Not only are you out there for a longer period of time, going anywhere from 10 hours to 40 hours continually, if you're in Milsim West, for example, there's more obstacles in your path because one, there's 100 plus people on the other team. That's going to make things more complicated than Speedsoft, which I think for league Speedsoft, like SpeedQB, I think it's the 5v5. I could totally be wrong about that, but it's a much smaller playing field, and at the same time, there's things you don't have to deal with. You don't have to deal with light machine gunners. You don't have to deal with tag rounds or snipers, anything like that. You don't have to deal with technicals. So the challenges between the two, really, they're different and they present their own challenges and really their own ways to work around these specific challenges. Now, what I see Speedsoft doing better than Milsim players is working together. I feel like in Milsim, and this is just my personal experience, your mileage may vary than me. Your opinion could always be different and your experiences could always be different. I feel like Speedsofters have better teamwork than Milsim players because in their environment, and again, I'm talking about in like a Speed QB tournament style, you've only got 5 guys, and you really have to make sure that everyone's covering their own angle, their own approach, so that, you don't get taken out. I feel like it's a lot more their games are a lot more focused on the teamwork, I feel. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not to say that there isn't teamwork or leadership in Milsim events. As someone who has taken on those roles before, they definitely still exist. The issue that I see is that it's not as organized because there's more people, and when there's more people and more opportunities for something to fail, it's gonna fail more often. So I feel like when you've got a tight-knit group of, like, 5 guys going, that is much easier to work with, especially if you've known these people, if you've played with them, if you've got a solid team. I feel like that's much more manageable than working with 150 people and you've only met, your squad. And I'm not saying that your squad can't be effective and you can't work together and, get the job done, but I'm saying that that's such a smaller percentage of your team as compared to on like a speed QB team. If you've got 5 people, it's much easier to manage that than if you've got 150. So that's really where I think that they have the advantage. The other thing that I've noticed is that Speedsoft players tend to be more aggressive, and I think that Airsoft benefits from being aggressive. There's not many experiences that I've been in where waiting has benefited you. There are opportunities for that. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I'm saying that typically, especially in more urban, smaller scale environments, typically being aggressive means that you're going to be the one that wins. And I feel like speedsofters kind of have that down. If you've ever watched, speed QV videos, these guys are aggressive and they know what they're doing. And it's not just like blindly rushing. It's, they have these tactics, they have it built down, and they're very aggressive in their play style. And I think that is a huge advantage that they have over Milsim players, which typically, again, this is my experience as the people that I've had the opportunity to meet. They're not super aggressive. They'd rather sit back and wait. They try to use range to their advantage. They try to use their other tools out there, like Humvees, tagging rounds, whatever it may be. While those are invaluable in a lot of games, don't get me wrong, I think that the core player on a player to player aspect, I think that speed softers are better in my experience because they're more aggressive and they work better in smaller teams. And I think that's really what you need to get down. Like I mentioned earlier, the more parts that you have in a machine, the more likely it is to fail. There's going to be points where, certain squads let you down. They don't do what they're needing to, or they don't communicate with you. And then there's going to be issues. So I think that on the smaller scale, working with small groups of people, I think that speed softwares are better at that, in my personal opinion. Now, again, the environments are different. So this could be comparing apples to oranges. If you're taking a look at, a 300 person Milsim game, there's more ground that you have to cover. There's unique terrain. You're not playing on a, I think Speed QB is a 150 by 100 feet field. Again, I could be wrong about that, but there's more unique obstacles for Milsim players. And I think one of the things that Milsim players can do to just be more effective is radios. I feel like it's something that airsofters really haven't taken full advantage of. There are people that use it, but I feel like it's one of those things that I think it's one of those great force multipliers that you can have. The ability to move information from one place to another quickly is a huge advantage. And I've noticed that even when I bring radios to pickup games, call me a tryhard or whatever it may be, when I bring radios to pickup games, it's easier, even if they're only, if the field's only like 300 by 300, it's still nice to be able to communicate my thoughts on the right hand side of the field to the guys on the left hand side of the field that are about to get pushed or were about to get pushed. So I feel like communication is one of those kind of weak points for a lot of players because radios they're new. There's a lot to get into with them, and it can be kind of difficult, especially for us here in the US. Like one of the things I always hear about Battlefang users is that they're worried about like, oh, the FCC is going to come and find me or take my radio or something like that. And radios are a little bit confusing, especially ham radios. The UV5R has had a weird year or so with people thinking that they're going to get banned from import. You can still buy them though. So it's been kind of weird, admittedly. But yeah, I think that communication is one of those things where speed softers just do a little bit better. But again, that could be because of the fact that they have a smaller environment to work with. So I'm just going to take a quick break from the conversation for a second because I have a question for you guys. And I want to ask, how easy was it to find today's stream? I had a lot of issues setting this up with YouTube. One of the issues I had is when I made this last night, I was like, yeah, I want it to be at 11 o'clock in the morning, at least here on the East Coast of the US. And it was like, "Oh, yeah, cool, you mean 8:30, right?" And I'm like, "No, I mean 11:30." And they're like, "Nah, you mean 8:30." So anyways, I'm like, "Whatever. It must just be an issue on my end." Go to bed, wake up today at 9, and it's like, "Yeah, you want that to be at 8:30 still, right?" Even though it had already passed. I'm glad that somebody got the notifications. I can see that in the chat. And to answer you, Dutch, I will be doing a small Q&A at the end of today's video. But getting back on the topic of Milsim versus Speedsoft. In the first part of this, we talked about how I think that Speedsofters just generally tend to be more aggressive, and I think that really helps them out. I'm also really glad to see that you guys are actually getting notifications. I'm glad that it actually works on YouTube sometimes. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be the gear of players. And the thing that I have noticed is that, again, Speedsofters kind of going, excuse me, with that more aggressive play style is that their gear tends not to be loaded down with things that they don't need. And I noticed that on a lot of Milsim players. Maybe because it looks cool, maybe they thought that it would have a purpose, but I've noticed that a lot of people just have stuff that they don't need. And the other thing that I find hilarious, people that don't know how to weave Molly. I know that this is a little bit of a side tangent, but I just love seeing dudes with like super Gucci gear, and then they don't have their backpack mollied on right, and it's like hanging halfway down the plate carrier. I just always find it hilarious. But yeah, I feel like the kind of mentality of less is more benefits to them. And I feel like that could be again because they don't have as many unique roles as you find in the milsim kind of game style. Again, you don't have like machine gunners, you don't have tags. That's all equipment that's heavy, kind of hard to carry, and just an annoyance overall. So I see why some people have a lot of gear on them. But I think that there are some people that take this kind of mentality of, less is more and apply it really well. And I think one of the people that do it the best, love them or hate them, is GMR. Um, I think that their gear is a nice mix between, being it's well built, like absolutely well built, and at the same time everything serves a function. One of the things that I think is the best product that they make is the mini mag. It's a little bit bigger than their mini map. It's kind of hard to explain because I don't have one with me. But I think that they're a great piece of kit, and the way that I've seen people use these is just incredible. One of the most interesting kits that I've ever seen was from this Milsim team out of Ohio, I believe. And he had a backpack on the back of his JPC, and on the front he had a smaller one. He had like a mini map. And I asked him, I'm like, well, first off, that looks pretty odd. But what's your reasoning behind this? And the way that he explained it is that the way that their gear is made, it works out for him perfectly having that backpack in the front of his plate carrier, which I mean, they're kind of small backpacks, but still, it's a backpack on your chest. And while it was odd to me, the way that he described it is he's like, well, my team has this system that we use. I can't remember the name, and I apologize about that. But it works for us. It works for me, a player. I have my box mags in here. I have frags because ultimately, that's their force multiplier is being able to put down automatic fire. Because in most milsim games, you can't put down automatic fire unless you are a dedicated LMG, and grenades. Grenades are one of those things that really can give you the upper hand in a lot of urban environments. And while I didn't see the usefulness of that kit for me, I saw how it was useful for someone else. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And one of the things that I've really been striving for as a player is, again, to adopt that less is more mentality. So at the moment, I'm using a Z-Shot Cry JPC. I got it for review about a year ago. I love it to death. What I have on there is pretty simple. I have my Spirit of Systems chest rig, which is a little micro rig. I don't have it in here, unfortunately. So it's a little micro rig. It holds 3 M4 mags. It holds 2 pistol mags in the front. And then I've got like one of their little Velcro fanny packs, which I'll use for general purpose. If I'm running 40 millimeter, I'll throw my tag shells in there. But otherwise, it's just storage space. The only other thing that I have on there is going to be some sort of backpack. It's either going to be the zip-on assault panel that Z-Shot makes, or I have a custom Mercury Bravo from Engage Tactical. If you're unfamiliar with them, It's a custom gear shop done by a friend of mine out in Ohio as well. It's kind of like a mini map in a way. Like it's that small backpack concept, I guess you could say. And I really like it. It's kind of similar, like kind of like a Haley flat pack. 'Cause I see someone mentioning that down in the comments below. It's a little bit bigger than a flat pack. Like I'd say it's right between the unzipped and the zipped version, somewhere right in the middle. Um, and that's all that I run on there nowadays. I don't have the cummerbund anymore. I just use a one band cummerbund because I realized that there's stuff that I was carrying that I don't need or I could carry more efficiently. So again, going back to the Spirit of Systems sack, it's one of those little fanny packs that attaches to the front of the plate carrier. A ton of companies make them. Spirit of Systems, Faro Concepts, Haley Strategic, Emerson, TMC, they all make these. They're basically fanny packs that attach to your plate carrier. What I love about that piece of kit is that there's so much that I can do with it. Now, the inside of the Spirit of Systems, and I'm pretty sure other brands have this as well, the inside of the Spirit of System is lined with hook Velcro, which means that I can put some of their like attachments and dividers in there so that I can customize it however I want. So if I want to have a secure way to hold 40 millimeter rounds, I can do that. But I just want it to be general purpose. I take everything out. If I want it to hold grenades, I can do that as well. And I feel like by dedicating yourself to these pieces of kit that are more they can be used for more than one thing. I think that's the best thing that a player can do to lighten their load, and that's what I appreciate about Speedsoft players is that they don't carry as much on them, and everything that they have on them can serve more than one purpose if they need to. So I think that that's one of the things that Milsim players can take away from it is that there's a lot on people's gear that they don't need, or they just bring too much. Like, when's the last time you saw someone bring easily 10 mags onto the field? I see it every time I play, and I don't get it because I run EPMs, so I have 150 rounds per mid cap. I never go through more than 3 mid caps in a game. Like, even at Milsim events, like, I always die before I go through all my ammo. So the dudes that have, like, 10 mags or go to the absolute, like, max of their mags, I just don't get it because it's weighing you down. And I see someone down in the comments asking, "Well, what's so bad about bringing everything?" And I'm not saying that's bad per se, but I feel like the more that you have on you, the more you're going to weigh yourself down and the less aggressive that you can be. And again, like we mentioned earlier in the stream, I think that being aggressive and being smart about when you are aggressive and how you are aggressive is how you can become a better player on the field. That's something that I've noticed from Speedsofters that I've tried to incorporate into my own gameplay. I mean, sure, there's going to be sometimes that you're going to want to be slow and steady because it's going to be advantageous in that moment. But overall, I think that being aggressive and having violence of action is going to make you a better player and lead to you having a better game. So I'm not saying that you should just, ditch everything that you need on your carrier. But if there's stuff that you don't need that's weighing you down, think about getting rid of it. For me, the only thing that I carry on my plate carrier are magazines and water. And water is iffy depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll have like a couple of water bottles in my cargo pockets. But yeah, I mean, I don't see the advantage of carrying so much stuff. Now, I will have other stuff on my belt as well. I'll have like a fanny pack, or I will have like the dangler style pouches that we talked about on my plate carrier. But my belt is typically like a HSGI Taco for another rifle magazine, a pistol magazine one as well, and then my dump pouch and a holster. The goal is to minimize what I carry on me to be as effective as possible. And I think that that's one of the things that Speedsofters tend to do better than Milsim players. And finally, I want to talk about the guns of Speedsoft because I find some of them hilarious. I think that some of them are really cool, and I think that's one of the places where you see the most stark difference between Milsim and Speedsoft. And I really want to talk about there's a gun coming out from G&G, and I don't remember the name of it, unfortunately, but you can just tell that it's a Speedsofter's gun. It's got a drop stock. It's either got no handguard or like a carbon fiber handguard. It comes in like a blue and a red. I can't remember what it's called. It's based off of an M4 platform, though. And I remember the hate that came out of this gun. I thought it was hilarious how people were like, well, this isn't airsoft and this is disgusting and blah, blah, blah. Looks like a paintball gun, whatever it may be. I thought that it was hilarious. Hello to everyone that's been coming in the stream as well. But I just thought it was hilarious because, like, while it's not my thing personally, that's not the type of thing that I'm into. I see the advantages that it gives. And that's one of the first things that I noticed going from, like a 16-inch M4 to a 10.5-inch build with an M-Lock rail. Having a light gun is really, really convenient. Yes, the SSG1. Thank you so much to whoever commented that down below. Having a light gun is a huge advantage, and I think that's really where Speedsofters shine. Because one, they're going to be using, chopped down little M4s, things like that. ARP9s are super popular as well, but also high kappas. Um, High kappas to me, I think that's something that Milsim players should look into. They're a great pistol. There's a lot of aftermarket support for them. I think that they're just great. They work well, and it's one of those things that, like, as someone who like used to be that guy that was like, man, Speedsoft is stupid. One day, someone came up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, do you want to try my high kappa with a drum mag?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" Like it's a meme, whatever. It was so cool. Um, like it was one of those things that really, this was a couple of years ago at this point, maybe 2 3 years ago, and I was like, man, I need to try this, and I see the validity of your play style now, although we don't like look the same because he was running around in like Air Force Ones and like just like regular everyday clothing. I was like, wow, that's kind of weird, my dude. But then again, I mean, I'm wearing like $800 worth of gear because I have nothing better to do with my life. That was kind of the turning point for me that made me realize, like, hey, there's some validity in what they're doing. And high kappas are really just this neat tool because they're small, obviously, because they're a handgun, but they shoot pretty much as far as most stock AEGs that you're going to find out there. Especially if you buy a TM, if you take the time to upgrade it, get a better slide, get some more parts in there, they'll run as good as an AEG, but at the same time, they're going to be lighter, they're going to be smaller and more mobile. And that's going to allow you to be more aggressive. And that's something that I've noticed and I've tried to put into all of the gun builds that I do. I try to make them as short as possible because realistically, for airsoft purposes, having a 10.5-inch barrel really doesn't take away any accuracy compared to going for a 14-inch or a 16-inch barrel. And by cutting down those couple of inches, you have a lot of more mobility. And the other thing is that I like to use tracers a lot. By having a 10-inch barrel, having a 6-inch tracer, I now have, a 16, 17-inch barrel on my gun versus having a 21 to 24-inch barrel, depending on what I was working on. So for me, I typically try to build my guns shorter, lighter. I measure, the parts I'm putting on my gun to be as lightweight as possible. And I've noticed that even in my purchasing decisions as well. As someone who's always been an M4 guy, I was like, well, I want something smaller. And I ended up buying an MP5. I got the MP5A5 from VFC and Elite Force, and I love it. It's small. It's not as small as I was expecting, though. I kind of wish I went with the MP5K, but VFC doesn't make those at the moment. And I'm happy that I have this smaller gun. I've got a lot of plans to it to make it just really this great CQB gun because I realize that that's really where I'm playing. And, while it doesn't have the longest barrel on an MP5, it's still plenty long enough for airsoft, especially if I was to go in and upgrade the barrel in the hop up. And that's one of the advantages that, again, I see with Speedsoft players is that building these high end, first off, let's talk about that. It's pretty rare that I see a Speedsofter with a stock gun. From what I've gathered, again, this is kind of an outsider looking in, is that the most important thing to them is making sure that their gun is good. That is one of the biggest mistakes that I made in airsoft, is getting a stock gun and be like, yeah, this is fine, and then worrying about gear. I mean, it's not that good of an idea. And if you're a new player watching this, focus on your gun and your safety equipment and then worry about everything else. Because when I got super serious about airsoft, I was like, man, it'd be really cool. Why don't I build like a Navy SEAL impression? And that was a rabbit hole of money that I wasted. And I don't own anything from that kit anymore, actually. So it was just a ton of waste of money. But realistically, I think the advantage I noticed that a lot of Speedsofters put the money into their gun. That's why they're not out there buying Cry uniforms or they're buying, a real JPC, something like that. They'll buy what works, which means you're going to their local field and spending $50 on a Vulcan JPC. And for them, that works. It holds their mags. They'll pick up something to hold a tank if they run an HPA, and you're good to go. So I see the advantage in that. And again, they're buying lightweight stuff. They're buying the smallest things that they need so they can be mobile, be aggressive, and have violence of action. Um, so that's what I've noticed. But at the same time, you see a lot of Milsim guys who are going for an impression build, whatever it may be, and they're focused more on the aesthetic. Like for example, I'm thinking about all the guns that I own right now. I have a VFC Mark 18, which has a good amount of upgrades in it. I've got my Wolverine MTW. It's an HPA airsoft gun, so it kind of can't be upgraded. But then I'm thinking back about some of the other guns that I've had. A VFC 416. I left bone stock. A E&L AK 105. Um, I just really don't. Excuse me. Like the E&L, I don't think that it was great, and I kept it that way for some reason. I mean, Russian kit was kind of on the back burner for me, but wasn't really what I wanted to. Really wasn't what I wanted. And what I noticed is that I was spending a lot of money on gear, and like my gear was like being more than the airsoft gun themselves. Like I've seen a lot of people talk about like like cry stuff is stupid. Like why would you spend that much money on combat pants? And it kind of goes back to talking about why would you buy an umbrella armory gun? Because that money is worth it to you. And nowadays, now that I don't play airsoft every single weekend and I have other things and other hobbies going on in my life, I'm working on my career, I notice that I don't need to spend that money. I see some of you guys talking about that down in the comments below. I really don't think like for me it's not worth it anymore. Like back in the day, I justified spending, $200 on a pair of Cry G3 combat pants. But now it's like, man, I'm just gonna go buy some true specs for $50 and be happy. And if they break, they break. Actually, my true specs lasted longer than my Cry gear. But I think that that's one of the big differences that you see in kind of, I'll call it the culture between Milsim and Speedsoft players. The focus is on the gun. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't Milsim players that go out and upgrade their guns. Pretty much every gun at this point has been upgraded that I own personally, with the exception of that MP5 I mentioned because I just got it. But realistically, I think that that is one of the biggest advantages that Speedsofters have, is that they're not really focused on the aesthetic. They're more focused about the raw performance and making sure that their gun is as good as possible. And I see a lot of guys out there who, like they want to get into Milsim. First thing they buy is they buy a 416 or they buy a Mark 18. And they're not bad guns. Don't get me wrong. The VFC 416A5 with the Avalon gearbox or the Mark 18 with the Avalon gearbox, to come to think about it, they're good guns out of the box. But you just spent $450 on that VFC 416, or you spent, I think they're $399 for the Mark 18s. I can be wrong about that. Versus a Speedsofter, you buy a TM high cap of 5.1 for $150 here in the US. You put $200 for the upgrades, and with your 1911, you can outrange that dude with the 416A5. Or you go out and you buy an ARP9 and you throw a Polar Star F2 in there, and you're good to go for, again, less money than that Mark 18 or anything else. And like, sure, the tanks and things like that are going to cost more. That's going to set you back if you want to go the HPA route. But I think that that's one of the biggest advantages that Speedsofters tend to have. I see someone commenting down in the comments talking about, the best return for your money for performance would be to invest in a gym membership or other training. And I think that that's completely right. Just to talk about like outside of airsoft, I think that getting a gym membership is one of the healthiest things that you can do, because like one of the big things for me that I've tried to do, anything that I buy for airsoft, I try to have another purpose in life. And sure, airsoft guns, there's not going to be any other purpose in life. But like the way that I justify spending money in airsoft nowadays is that, like, for example, if I need a new pair of boots, I've had my Merrell Moabs since I was in high school. So, going on like 6 years at this point, they're trashed. I need to replace them, but I don't. But like the thing that's keeping me from purchasing them is that I haven't been able to go outside as much. If I was going hiking more, I mean, New York has beautiful state parks and they're everywhere. I could see myself spending the money. But going back to the fact that, like, yeah, a gym membership would probably be your best investment for airsoft, because you're going to live a happier, healthier life. Every time that I go to the gym, I feel better about myself. I feel more confident. And not to get off topic, but I think that is one of the best things that you can buy. And when you're buying anything for airsoft, think about the other purposes that you can use it for. If it's something that you're going to be using every day, like, again, a good pair of footwear, absolutely spend more money on it. And I'm not saying that like you can't buy something expensive. Like the conversation is kind of geared towards high end combat pants, like Cries or Beyond pants, which I do own. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy them if you can justify the money and be like, yeah, I need these because yeah, they cost a lot. I'm going to use them X amount of times and they're going to be beneficial to me in these ways. Go ahead and buy them. It's just not my thing right now. I used to be one of those guys, but I don't play enough to justify it. But overall, I think that the main differences that you're going to see between Milsim and Speedsofters can be categorized to a couple of different things. I think that with Milsim players, they tend to be a little bit slower, a little bit more cautious, I guess you could say, whereas speed softers tend to be a little bit more aggressive. And in my opinion, I think that the aggressiveness is a good thing. I think that by being aggressive and having good violence of action in any type of airsoft, you're going to do well. Whether it's going to be in Speed QB or in Milsim, I think that you being the one of, if you're in control of what you're going to be doing, if you're going to be the one that's in control and you're the one that sets up the scenario and sets up the firefight, you're more likely to be successful. Now, I'm not saying just like run in and like rush B, but like if you think about it and your aggressiveness has a purpose and it has tactics behind it, I think that you'll do better. I think that's something that speed softers do much better than Milsim players. Now, talking about gear and equipment, I think that again, just building a slower loadout, or not a slower loadout, excuse me, a smaller loadout, not having that weight on you is going to make you more nimble. It's going to allow you to be more aggressive. And going back, being aggressive is going to be what wins firefights. And if you're the one that's able to set up the engagement, you're going to be more likely to win. Going on finally to kind of the culture of it. I think that again, but focusing on the things that are going to make you a better player is more important than the things that are going to make you look cooler so you can go get Instagram likes. Focusing on making sure that your gun works properly, that you're upgrading it. At this point, if you're committed into airsoft, and let's say you've got a good gun, you've got a VFC, you've got a Crytac, even a GMP, if you're debating between buying a $250 JPC or buying a Gate Titan and a better hop up and barrel, I can't tell you what to buy, but the best thing that you could buy in that situation would be the gun upgrades because it's gonna increase your capabilities. And I'm not saying that a good gun will make you a good player, but I think that a good player can take advantage of a good gun better than a bad player, if that makes sense. So overall, I think that there's a lot of things that Milsim players can learn from speed softers. And again, this is coming from the point of view of someone who is more of a Milsim player. These are just my personal opinions. I'm not trying to trash any type of airsoft. I think that they're both, they both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses. Um, but at this point, I'm going to kind of transfer into a Q&A style of video for a little bit. If you want to ask about the topic that we were just talking about, if you want to ask your own questions, make sure to put them down in the live chat and I will answer them as I see them. The first one I'm going to talk about is going to be buying a JG AUG. Are they worth the money? Realistically, I don't think that there's a lot of AUGs that are great out there. If you want a project gun, possibly. It's been a while since I've used a JG airsoft gun. I kind of forgot that they existed. I would also take a look at the ones that ASG makes. I forgot who the OEM is on those, but I would look into a little bit better brand because there aren't any super high end AUGs out there. So you may just want to start out with a better, excuse me, you might want to start off with a better base gun and upgrade going into it. One of the biggest things that I can see being an issue is magazines. GHK is high end as well. I assume that he was talking about AEG. Pretty much everything from GHK is pretty much good to go out of the box, and they do make an AUG in gas blowback, which is super cool. Asking about what my go-to grenade is, the EG67. I personally like one-time grenades. They cost more, but I'm not going to be sad about them. I used to be a tornado guy. I used to be a thunder bee guy. And a couple of things kept happening. I kept losing them or they kept getting stolen. So that's why I've just moved over to single-use grenades like the EG67 from Enola Gay. Now, there are tag R2Bs. I find that the Enola Gays are easier for me to find personally, but the tags are good as well. So my preferred grenade is the EG67. It's filled with dried clay or peas, something like that on the inside. and they work well. I see the advantage of things like tornadoes, of thunder bees, depending on which kind of depending on what type of environment you're in. But realistically, I've had thunder bees, just get picked up. I've had them, just disappear into the nether. So I just don't want to I don't want to spend $60 on something that I'm going to throw and possibly lose. I'll put it that way. I'd rather spend, $10, $12 a throw and just be okay with the fact that I'm never getting that back. Um Someone else is mentioning Enola Gay products. I'm not sure which one the MK5 is. The US is kind of weird with Enola Gay products. We don't have their full range. I've got a little bit of pyro left from Enola Gay. I've got like half a case of EG18s. I've got some of their flash grenades, which I haven't seen in a couple of years, and then I've got some EG67 still tucked away from last season. Now I see another question down in the comments: is it better to run HPA or an AEG in a 24-hour game? And I would say that depends exactly what it is. It also depends on what your role is. If you're just looking for a rifleman, I see the advantage with both. I think that for a large scale game, HPA has its biggest advantage in light machine guns. Talking for 45 minutes makes you a little thirsty. I think that it has its biggest advantage in machine guns because realistically, you want that consistent firepower, and you can typically destroy a gearbox in like an A and K. But just for a standard rifleman, I mean, realistically, as someone who's done both, I would say it depends. If it's nonstop 24 hours, if you're going to be taking breaks, I can see the advantage in AEG and the fact that you don't need to have so many tanks. It's also going to depend how much you fire. Like for me, I never had to carry a lot of tanks, and that's really what turned me on to like the Wolverine Wraith stock. Because I don't fire a lot, admittedly. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I can go out onto the field with 3+1 mags and not run out of those 3 mags before I die. So I see the advantage in both of running an AEG because it's going to be a little bit lighter because you don't have that tank on your back. But at the same time, HPA is incredibly consistent. If you have a good barrel and hop up in either one of those, you're going to do fine. But I would say it's what is going to be the best for you. Kind of the breaking point for me of whether I decide to bring HPA or an AEG is the fact that if I'm going to be wearing a ruck or not. I've been to a lot of 24-hour games where I can just run off like a big assault pack. Like I have, I actually have it here. I have this guy from LBX, I believe, makes this. Yeah, it's the LBX Light Strike Assault Pack. I can put everything that I need for 24 hours in there. If I go to a larger game, like if I go to like a 40-hour, I need my ruck. And I know that with my ruck, I don't want to carry a tank because that is super uncomfortable to deal with. So like I wouldn't want to run HPA for like a Milsim West game, for example, because of how much rucking is involved. But if I'm going to like an American Milsim, and Sado, Third Coast, where I don't need a ruck, I can survive off that assault pack. I see the advantages in bringing HPA, especially a game where you can go out to your car. One of the issues that I've noticed specifically with what you're mentioning about looking to throw it in a flat packs don't have a lot of padding on them. And what I would always find myself doing is having to wrap my HPA tank in t-shirts to make it just a little bit more comfortable on my back. Now, I believe it's the gray flat pack has more padding because it's tended more to be like an everyday pack. But the flat pack combined with its kind of poor strap design, in my opinion, makes it not great for running big HPA tanks. I think I would run a 48 typically. It's been so long since I've used a tank that I couldn't tell you. But I think the flat pack by itself isn't great for holding tanks, and I always found myself having to put something between me and the tank to make it just a little bit more comfortable. Now, obviously, if you're running it on the back of a plate carrier, that issue is resolved. But if you're running it as a chest rig or just have the backpack on you, it's going to be uncomfortable. But again, we are doing a Q&A, so make sure that everyone suggest your comments down below. A solid DMR AEG for under $300 does not exist. I think that I saw it earlier is that DMRs are built, not bought. I think that if you want a solid DMR, you're at least gonna have to put $150 into your hop up and barrel. I think the best thing that you could do, depending on depending on what the requirements are for the events that you want to go to, because some allow you to do it with a standard M4. Buy a Crytek, buy an Avalon, upgrade it. If you have to have a 762 platform, it gets a little bit trickier. And at that point, I would suggest, like an A&K SR25 or something like that, some other 762 platform that you like. Because realistically, there's no good AEG that's going to be a DMR out of the box, and that's how I feel about sniper rifles as well. You can't go out and buy a JG Bar 10 and expect to be Novrich. You're gonna have to put the money in to a good gun, and obviously Novrich has filled that role with his own airsoft guns. But yeah, any sort of 7.62, like your Scar H and FAL, even that any sort of battle rifle could work for you. The issue with Scar H's in particular is that their hop ups kind of suck. Which is one of the issues that I've always noticed. M14s are incredibly hard to work on, especially with HPA. So that's typically why I would always just recommend the SR25. Jordan asks, he mentions that in Australia they do not have airsoft, but they have gel blasters. They want to know my thoughts on it. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any experience with gel blasters. From what I understand from them, which again is very limited, I think they're pretty cool. I don't really see the difference between airsoft in the grand scheme of things, but I do think that they're pretty neat. I'd like to see more of them. I'd like to actually get my hands on one of them, but I think it sucks that places don't have airsoft. But yeah, it's great that you guys do have an alternative. I'm curious what the range is on them though. Like typically we can get about 150, 200 feet. So I'm curious about like what the range is on those. Um, Going further into the questions you guys are asking, what do I think about map packs with a PC versus like a mini map from Milsim? Um, Realistically, if you're talking about like a GMR mini map versus a like a regular map pack, something that I noticed that I hate when my backpack hits below the plate bag. It's something that I've known for years and something that I've always avoided. So I go with smaller bags. Again, if you're going to be like we talked about earlier in the video before the Q&A, if you're able to condense what you need on the airsoft field, then you're going to be fine with a mini map or any other similar product out there. But typically, I won't even look at a backpack that's molly mounted if it doesn't fit in the confines of a plate bag, because I hate when it hits me in the back because I'm going to throw water in there. I know I'm going to throw water in my backpack for a game. I don't want to feel that hitting my lower back when I run. It's just obnoxious and I hate it. So I think that the mini map is great. It's very expensive. But I think that they're a great option. There's other things that you can look into. Like again, the N-Gage Tactical Mercury Bravo is my personal choice for a small bag. There's a lot of designs here. So definitely you have some options depending on your budget. There's more than I can mention in an entire video. Going further down in the questions, and again, because we are doing a Q&A, feel free to submit your questions in the comment live chat section. I'm going to answer Shallow Bay's question asking what I feel about box magazines. They help with you being effective when you're being aggressive. I think that especially if you are like I think the place that they're used best for a Milsim scenario is Desert Fox events. Now, at Desert Fox events, they have a rule that if you have a submachine gun, so a gun that natively fires a pistol caliber cartridge, we're talking about MP5s, MP7s, UMPs, the list goes on and on. I think that they have an advantage there because their rule is that you're one of the only players that can go full auto with no MED. Actually, you are the only player that can go full auto with no minimum engagement distance. Having a drum, if you're going to be hyper aggressive in that sort of scenario, is really helpful because you're not worrying about your magazines. If you have something with a halfway decent auto with a auto wind, I think I think that you're going to do absolutely fine and have a good time on the airsoft field. But I think that they're not going to I think that they're not going to give you any sort of advantage if you're not being aggressive, because realistically, if you're not playing aggressive, it's just added weight and it's bulk on your airsoft gun. They're hard to deal with. They're typically not as good as mid caps. So I think that they have their advantage for being super aggressive. But I don't think that I don't think that they have advantages in any other scenario. Again, for something like Desert Fox events where you can go full auto and you don't have to worry about an MED, they're great. That I'm trying to think of how to put it. Something from general airsoft, like the entire airsoft community. I wish that people were nicer to each other. Um, for a lot of people, airsoft is their escape. It's the thing that they do to forget about life. And I hate it's not just a Milsim thing. That's not just a Speedsoft thing. I think that there are people that go out to the airsoft field with the sole purpose of being a bad player, and I don't want to get demonetized, so I won't say certain things, but I think that there are people that go out to the airsoft field and they go there and say, I want to ruin someone else's day, or I don't care how other people are enjoying airsoft. So if there's one thing that I could remove from airsoft, that would absolutely be it. To remove one thing from the gameplay of airsoft, I mean, realistically, I wish that more apps like Desert Fox Events app, the Blue Fox Tracker existed. I wish that they're more used more kind of widely because I feel like they give players a great way to know what's going on. I feel like there's a lot of people, especially newer players in Airsoft, who have no idea what's going on, and because of that, they just don't have a great time in it. So yeah, that would be one of the things that I would add or remove to Airsoft, I guess you could say. Um, but yeah, I mean, realistically, I think that one of the worst things about airsoft is the way that some people treat other people. Going on to another question though, because that was kind of deep. What do Lone Wolf asked what I feel about fast pull grips on magazines. So I'm going to assume that you mean like mag pulls. I think that they have their advantage. Um, I don't use them at this point because I like the base plate on EPMs. I don't have one near me, but they have like an angle on them which allows you to be able to set it down on something and it acts as kind of like a monopod. I really like those. I see the advantage of having a little bit more to grab onto at the base of the magazine. Like all of my pistol magazines for my Glock 17 have extended base plates because they're easier to grab onto, and it's something that I can just yank out of the pouch and throw into my gun. I think that they can work for you if you want to go out and pick up mag pulls. They're pretty cheap, or even if you want to get some paracord and duct tape and do it like the old school guys did. I mean that works as well. I would say if it works for you and it works for your reloads, go right ahead. But I've noticed that because I run a couple of different platforms. I have my M4. Sometimes I like use pistol only. I have my MP5 now. I prefer not to have them. I prefer to just grab the body of the magazine because I'm not going to go out and buy mag pulls for every single platform that I have because they're in different platforms. Keep going down through the list of questions asking about a Tippmann HPA M4 or the Wolverine Airsoft MTW for a 24-hour game. As someone who owns the MTW and has a lot of friends that own the Tippmann, despite the fact that I've had countless issues with the MTW, and you can see that in my most recent review, by the MTW. Between the two of them, the Tippmann is cool. It's not practical. One of the big things that I don't like about it is it recoils forward. It's just an awkward feeling to me. I mean, it's kind of cool, but like it feels like it's rattling more than it's recoiling, if that makes sense. They're not great. I mean, they've gotten better over the last couple of years, but I despite the fact that I've had issues with my MTW, and again, those are documented in my review of it that I did about a month or two ago, I'd still recommend the MTW absolutely over the Tippmann. I think that they're just a better quality product. I see another question down there asking if gas guns are possible to use during Milsim events. Absolutely. Especially if you have another role. Like I'm going to talk about my buddy Garrett over at Gun Gamers. He exclusively runs gas blowback airsoft guns, primarily Wii's, and I think he has a GHK or two, but primarily WeTech gas blowback airsoft guns. And he does, sorry about that, he does pretty well. I mean, this is all that he's done to the point that it's kind of what he's committed himself to, and it's what everybody knows. Like, if he brings an AEG to a game, it's weird. I think he only has like 1 or 2 at this point anyways. But I think that you can absolutely run a gas blowback airsoft gun, especially at a Milsim event, because I feel like it's more about the other tools that you have at your disposal. Like for him, not only does he run gas blowback, he also really likes 40 millimeter, like tag stuff. And I feel like the tag is his primary casualty producing piece of equipment. It's not the airsoft gun, it's the 40 millimeter rounds that he's launching 200 feet at a Humvee that's making him effective on the field. So I think that you absolutely could go out and run a gas blowback airsoft gun. Keep in mind, you're going to have disadvantages. You don't have as much firepower, you don't have as much range. While the recoil is cool, it's going to affect your accuracy. I think that you can use them at Milsim games, but I don't think that you're going to be as effective. But, if you're just out there to have fun, who really cares? Yes, Dutch, this is a pop filter. This is a super cheap one I got like years ago. But yeah, it's nice being able to as we start to use this sort of thing. Because I bought this, I want to actually use it. So being able to use it for something besides classwork has been super useful. Keep on going through the questions on here. First off, tags are great. They are incredibly expensive. I've got about another box or so. Like tags are again one of those things like we talked about earlier that if you can afford it and you see the purpose and you can go to enough fields that allow it or enough events that allow it, they're worth the money. They're super cool and super satisfying. But yeah, again, it's one of those things that they're expensive, but if you can justify it, go for it. Going through the list of questions again, do I think the VFC Avalon is a good gun for Speedsoft? Yeah, I think it's a good starter gun. I think that if you want to convert to HPA, don't buy such an expensive body. Buy a G&G. If you want to keep it AEG, upgrade it. Get like a Gay Titan, possibly do like an SSG, DSG, anything like that. I think that they're a good gun to start with. The same thing with Crytax as well. I think at this point, especially if you plan on upgrading, buy whichever one's cooler, because I think that they're both going to serve that purpose equally as well. Just kind of going through some more of the questions, asking about my thoughts on periscopes for spotting. Realistically, I don't use any super high magnification things. The highest magnification that I own is a 1x4 short dot. And I only use the scope. I've only ever used scopes that would be mounted to my rifle. I don't see the advantage in it because realistically, you can only shoot 200 feet. So, I mean, the 4 time is more than enough for me. And again, going back to earlier, I like to buy stuff that I can use for other aspects. That's also an optic that I can throw on my real rifles when I go shooting. So I don't see a huge advantage in it. I think that there are some games where it could be beneficial, like in Milsim West, to have a kind of higher magnification spotting scope. But for shooting, I don't think that they're very worth it. Keep on going through. What is the best inner barrel for AEGs? I would take a look at something like a Prometheus, EDGI. There are a lot of good brands out there. I think that Promi is going to be your best like money to value ratio. I think that there are better barrels out there, but I think that really they're good for their money. And it's also going to matter, your nub, your bucking, things like that. Those are all going to depend on exactly. Okay, I misheard I misread the question from earlier asking about spotting scopes. They're asking about one-time magnification scopes to be able to see and look over walls, things like that. Realistically, I don't think they have a purpose. I think it's another piece of gear that's very niche, and it's something that I don't run into very often. I feel like I'd get shot setting the thing up, or they're going to see it, know that I'm on the other side of the wall, and throw a grenade over the wall. Going through some other questions, wide bore or tight bore for HPA in general, let's say tight bore. The wide bore thing has kind of been debunked. There were like Orga was really popular for tight bores, but you've seen a lot of people who know way more about HPA than I do stop recommending them. I believe Wolverine Airsoft did a video on it on their own YouTube channel. I'd recommend that out. I'd also take a look at some of the leaders in HPA like Amped Airsoft, Airsoft Junkies. They'd be able to tell you a little bit more than I could, but I know that I believe wide bores have kind of been debunked as not being more accurate. What is my thoughts on AEPs? I think that they're fun. I don't think that they're great. And it depends exactly what you're talking about because there's a lot of different AEPs out there and a lot of different qualities. You could talk about something like the Cyma Glock 18. They're pretty bad. And at that point, like while full auto is great, I'd rather just have like any sort of gas blowback pistol. I'd rather, excuse me, have like an Elite Force 1911 over one of those. If you're talking about something like the TM MP7 AEG, I think that they're good airsoft guns. I think that there's not a lot of support for them, which kind of sucks. But I feel like they can have a purpose, but I feel like they're not very great. And I feel like if you're looking for a small AEG, you'd be better off looking at the Elite Force MP7 AEG. While it does have some problems because it's in like its first or second generation at this point, I think that having that full sized gearbox in there is really going to be beneficial. Looking through some more of the questions, thank you guys for submitting them. We're going to go for a little bit longer here as we approach the 1 hour mark. Some people were talking about Umbrella Armories down in the comments. They make good airsoft guns. I can't deny the fact that they make a good product. It's an expensive product, but like we've talked about a couple of times in today's stream, if you can justify it, go for it. I can't justify spending $1,300 on an airsoft gun right now. As a poor college student who is struggling for work because of coronavirus, I'm not going to go out and spend $1,300 on an AEG. There's parts from those guns that I like that I can just buy myself. I really like the PTS rail that they have on there. I'll just go and buy the rail. If I want to go and buy, I'll put a Gate Titan in my gun and I'll throw a better barrel and hop up, and I'm pretty much, 80% of the way there. I think the DSG does have an advantage, but there's a lot of places I go to that don't allow full auto. So I think that you can get a gun that is pretty close to an Umbrella for not as much money. But I think that they, if you can justify the money, absolutely go for it. It's a good gun. It's going to be like anything else, though. What you put into it is going to affect how it performs. If you use bad batteries, if you use bad BBs, you're not going to have a very good time. Like I saw someone who bought an Umbrella Armory and then they were throwing in Matrix BBs, which I'm very picky about the BBs that I use in my airsoft guns. The only brands I really use are Elite Force and HPA. It made me cringe watching them put in super cheap BBs, which is hilarious. So you spent over $1,000 on an airsoft gun, and you can't spend $15 on a bottle of 3.2s. Keep on going through these here. Do you know of any companies that sell airsoft bouncing betties? I do not. I've seen some airsoft claymores, but I've never seen anything like that. I've seen like landmines that you can dig into the ground, but they're like powder or water. And like I'd be pretty tight if I got sprayed with like a bunch of water in like a cool summer, like a cool spring day. I'd be pretty upset. But I don't know any companies that make anything like that. They're a really niche product, and a lot of fields don't allow them. So I could, I don't know anyone that makes them truthfully. Plus, like, there will be the guy that gets hit by it, looks around to make sure that no one saw it, and then they're like, "Well, I didn't get hit," and then just keep going. That'll happen, unfortunately. Just kind of going, and again, if you want to keep on submitting your questions, going right ahead. Asking what the best trigger response AEG is going to be. That's going to be anything with a good MOSFET built in. I don't want to put like a definitive winner on there because it's also going to rely on your battery. If you're using a 7.4 versus an 11.1 LiPo, if you're using a 9.6 nunchuck, which still exists oddly enough, it's going to affect what your trigger response is. So I'd say anything with like a gate or a Jeftron built right in would be one of your best bets. VFCs and Crytacs are snappy, but again, it's going to depend on your batteries that you use as well, and if your gun has a pre-built-in MOSFET. Drake asks what I feel about the tap adapters. I think they're really cool. So let me explain what those are. So the tap adapter, assuming we're talking about the same product from Tap Airsoft, is an adapter that you put into your pistol. Like let's say your high kappa that allows you to run M4 magazines out of it. I think that they're a great idea. I think it looks goofy, don't get me wrong, but I think they're such a cool concept, and they're not the only people that make them. Primary Airsoft also makes M4 adapters for high Kappas and Glocks. I think the Primary Airsoft adapter is a little bit better. From what I've been able to see and from people I've talked to, they're just made a little bit better. They feel a little bit more rigid because all of these are 3D printed at the end of the day. I think they're great, and if you're one of those people that wants to run their pistol, just the pistol, I think that they're great. Now, if you're curious, they do run off HPA. That's how you're able to use an AEG mag and not worry about gas. I think that they're a great option, and it's one of those things I'm looking into for when Airsoft opens back up for my Tokyo Marui Glock 17. On the I haven't talked about it on the channel in a very long time because I haven't used it, but like I've been dying to use that gun, and it has the PTS Atom slide, which is really heavy and hard to run off anything besides like black gas. So I'm excited to use something like that because HPA alleviates the issues of low gas pressure. And I'm just going to keep buzzing through the comments. Thank you guys so much for submitting them. I'm trying to take questions from a couple of different people. Lone Wolf wants to know what my personal kill streak is in one game. The thing that comes to mind is kind of cheap, and it's why I'm gonna tell this story knowing that like it didn't feel like I earned it. Um, a couple of years ago, at an indoor field in the Northeast, and the refs weren't great, and I feel like that's always been one of the weak points of airsoft fields is their staff members. And they're like, we need 3 people to hold out against everybody else. I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. So the ref literally told me to put my barrel between like 2 pieces of wood. So like it was, and I was like, "Isn't this blind fire?" He's like, "No, no, go ahead." And it was one of those scenarios where like, and again, this could be a video. This could be a video on its own. Talking about fields and referees because you could tell that like the staff and the people that I was with on this like lone survivor team was their buddy, and they just wanted a couple of people to have a good time versus everyone else. So like he had me on the ground shooting at this like there's like this little tunnel thing that you could get through because I was like I'm not shooting through 2 pieces of wood. It was like this little tunnel type thing, and I easily shot 75 people in the ankles. So like strictly speaking, that's probably the best kill streak I've ever gotten. But it felt cheap, and I was like, man, this place kind of sucks. Like everyone else is not having fun. Why would you do a game that only like 3 people can have fun? Um, but yeah, I would say that's my best. Otherwise, I've had some really good experiences running pistol only. Like if my batteries die, like I'll just go out and run around with my pistol, like hiding in the woods, just waiting for people. And those are some of like my favorite. I've got a video from years ago. I don't even remember what it's called at this point. It was at a field called River City Airsoft, where I crept through the woods and I got to the other side of the field and I took the entire team from the back and I shot like 7 or 8 people within like 30 seconds in the back. And that was like one of my favorite memories from Airsoft. But otherwise, I don't really keep track of that sort of stuff. To me, like I just try to have fun. I think that like goofing off and enjoying yourself in Airsoft is better than trying to get like a super high kill streak. If I want to do that, I'll go play Battlefield or something. But like I think that it was just a good time. But yeah, that one experience where I got just a ton of people, it felt so cheap and I felt pretty bad. Um, Keep on going through asking about comms in Milsim events and asking shorter or longer ones. For shorter or longer, I assume that you're talking about your antenna. I get away with an 8. I have like an 8-inch Nagoya antenna. It's fine for what we do as airsofters. For an event staff, I still use that as well. I think that having communications is a great tool. Being able to give information from one side of the field to the other rapidly is a great thing to be able to do. And I'd highly recommend picking up a UV5R or whatever's legal and available in your own country, depending exactly where you are. Overwatch Gaming wants to know my opinions on the SSG-24 Novich's sniper rifle. I think that he's a very good marketer and he's a very smart guy. I think that there are better sniper rifles than his. But I think that he was very smart to be one of the first people to put together a pre-upgraded sniper rifle for people because a lot of marketing in airsoft has been to push cheap sniper rifles on people with the expectation that they'll be good. And you go out and you buy like $100 VSR 10, or not a VSR 10, like a bar 10, a knockoff of the VSR. Um, and they're not great. And like for young, like I see a lot of people that get into airsoft, and they're like, "Well, I want to be a sniper because like I do it in Call of Duty or I do it in Battlefield or Fortnite, whatever." But like I feel like there's better options for those people. But going back to the sniper rifle, I think that he was really smart to be one of the first people to release a pre-built sniper rifle that was good to go out of the box. I think that there are better sniper rifles out there, and I think that if you have the technical capability, you can build something better for the same amount of money. His BBs are good as well. That's a very important part of a sniper rifle is your BBs. But I think that you could go out and buy a Tokyo Marui VSR-10 and build a better gun than his. But that's just my personal opinion. I think that they're still good airsoft guns. Like I would use one if I had the opportunity, but like I think that building it yourself can be better if that's exactly what you're looking for. Going through, what do I think about the G&G G2 gearbox? I've never had the chance to use it. I applaud them for doing something different, though. I feel like Airsoft is kind of stuck in this weird place where nobody wants to do something different because everyone's going to complain about it. Like, oh, well, it's not, V2 compatible, so I'm not going to buy it. But then they'll be like, man, Airsoft needs to improve. But like, there's only so much improvement that you can do in the same gearbox design that's been around for like, what, 2 decades at this point? So, like, I applaud people that are doing something different from the standard gearbox. KWA did stuff that was good at the time with a different gearbox. KWA has kind of fallen to the wayside nowadays, I feel. But like I feel like I feel like there's companies that are doing things that are different than the standard V2. They're doing it well. Like Crytek, for example. It's very minute. You can still use regular V2 parts, but there are some things that are different. There's some parts that are reinforced from your standard V2, and I think that's a step in the right direction. But I think the biggest improvement that we're going to see from Airsoft outside of HPA is going to be someone creating a better system than the V2 gearbox. I applaud people like Wolverine, like Polar Star, that are coming out with their own systems that just go right into a standard body. I think that that's a really good idea. As someone who owns one of those, the Wolverine Airsoft MTW, I think that'll be the best advantages that you can have out there is eventually building a system that is better than the V2 gearbox. Like if someone can build a gun that uses a standard barrel and hop up assembly, but it's better than the V2 gearbox, I think they'll be successful. I'm going to take a couple of questions and then wrap up because despite the fact that I am quarantined, I still have college classes, which is kind of obnoxious to deal with online. Kind of going through some other questions on here. The SSP1 from Nobrich, that is that's the high kappa, right? Not the Tokyo Marui Mark 23 knockoff. They're good. Again, same deal. You can, if you want something that's pre-made, they're not bad, but they're KJW high kappas, and you could build something that is better. Going through some more of these questions. My thoughts on the ICS L85 versus the G&G. I don't know about that specific gun. The only ICS airsoft gun that I've owned has had issues. So personally, I've had better luck with G&G in the past, but I don't know enough about L85s. Here in the United States, they're not very popular. I think I've seen like 3 or 4 in my decade of playing airsoft. So I think they're cool. Like I think that they're a neat gun, but I think that like especially here in the US, we have this like weird like hatred of the L85. We're like, man, the L85 sucks because the A1 was bad, but the A2 and the A3 are decent service rifles. But we don't see a lot of them here in the US. Someone's asking about my blue water bottle. This is Thermo Flask. I got it from actually my girlfriend got it for me from Costco. So sorry, it's not like a Cry Precision water bottle or anything like that. So let's go through a couple more questions because again, it's been about an hour at this point. What are my thoughts on investing on a good, high quality weapon over a $100 M4? I think that if you're serious about airsoft, you need to spend at least $250 on your AEG. I think there are some exceptions out there, like the ARP9s are good, and those aren't super expensive. But I think that like really you would have to I think that you have to spend a little bit of money to have a good time in airsoft. And I don't think that there's any airsoft product that you can buy under $100 that'll make you competitive on the airsoft field. That's my own personal opinion, but there's nothing really out there that you're going to get that's going to make you competitive and have a good time on the airsoft field that isn't very expensive. I got another comm question asked about single or dual comms for a 24-hour game. Realistically, I use single comms all the time. I use single comms as an event organizer as well. The advantage for dual comms is only going to be if you're in a leadership position and you got to talk to a lot of people. But realistically, single comms are easier. There's less equipment you have to buy, and it's easier to do. My personal radio setup, I have a Baofeng UV5R, I have a Nagoya 8-inch antenna, and I have a Code Red headsets push to talk. That's all that I need for what I do in Airsoft. And again, that's in a leadership position, that's in an event organizer situation. That's what works for me, and that's what a lot of my friends use as well. There is the UV82 from Baofeng if you do want to have dual comm capabilities. What are my thoughts on the ASG CZ Scorpion Evo? I think that it's a good little airsoft gun. It was something that I was seriously thinking about buying compared to my MP5. Um, Personally, the thing that did it for me, I wanted a collapsing stock, and that's why I bought the MP5. There are aftermarket collapsing wire stocks, the Scorpion Evo, but I didn't want to spend that much money on an airsoft gun and then buy more on the externals. I think that they're good guns. Again, don't get me wrong, and I think that they can be worth the money, but I personally, for me, the MP5 was what did it for me. But I think they're great airsoft guns, and if you like it, absolutely go for it. I'm gonna answer. I'm gonna answer one more question. What are my opinions on night vision for airsoft? I think that depending, it's the same argument I would give. Night vision, I feel like, is different than an expensive airsoft gun. That it gives you a lot of capabilities that you couldn't do before. Now, if you're gonna buy night vision, go big or go home. Gen 1s are garbage. If you're gonna spend the money on a Gen 2, spend a couple $100 more and get a Gen 3. Um, so like low end night vision is garbage, and you are not gonna have any advantages with it. And I know someone's gonna say, "Well, my $500 like Ghost Hunter Gen 1 works for me. All I got to do is throw on my big IR illuminator, which is gonna paint me as a target from like 300 yards away." If you're gonna buy night vision, you have to go big or go home. So you're gonna have to buy a Gen 3 PVS 14, a PVS 7, whatever it may be. That can be very hard for people that don't live in the United States because of ITAR. If you're lucky enough to live in the United, I shouldn't say lucky enough. If you live in the United States, and you have, or you're somewhere that does have readily available access to night vision, if you go to a lot of those games, it can be really beneficial to have. It gives you capabilities that you've never had before. And I think that they can be a great force multiplier and really just a good time. But if you're gonna buy night vision, you gotta buy the other stuff as well. You're gonna have to go out and buy some sort of laser aiming device. And this is just if anyone here is looking for a laser aiming device, don't buy the GMP D-ball because they are not eye safe. You're gonna melt someone's eyes with the IR. If you're spending 2-3 grand on your night vision, spend a couple $100 on a real Steiner D-ball. There's a lot that you're gonna have to buy besides just the night vision unit. But I think that they are incredibly useful. I think that they serve their purpose well, and they can be a great force multiplier if you go to games where they're going to be advantageous. If you play 2 night games a year, like let's say you go to 2 Milsim Vs, I can see why you wouldn't want to buy them. If you want to try them out, there are plenty of rental experiences out there. A couple of years ago, I used nightvisionrentals.com, and for like $100 a night, I got like a real ops core, and I got a PVS 14 and a D-ball. That was a pretty good deal for someone that doesn't use them. For someone that just wanted to try out night vision, see if it was for me. That was a good idea. If it's something that you can use 3-4 times plus a year, buy the night vision. But again, if you're going to do it, go big, go buy a Gen 3, because anything else really is not worth it. And by the way, flashlights cannot counter night vision. That's always an argument that I hear, but like your spotlight isn't going to do anything if you can't see the guys that are coming after you. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for staying until the end. I appreciate it. This was real fun to do. Like I mentioned way at the beginning of the stream over an hour ago, I'm working on a video that was supposed to go up today. It's different than anything I've ever done before. So admittedly, it's going to take a little bit extra time, but that should be out on next Friday. Now, I do want to say again, thank you guys so much. Thank you for everyone that watched. If you want to connect with me more, make sure to join the BB Warrior Discord server. I'm going to be throwing that in the description of this video in just a minute because I forgot to put it in at the beginning. But if this was your first time here, I'd love it if you joined our community. Click that subscribe button down below. I hope that everybody enjoys their Friday, enjoys their quarantine. If they're in a place like me where a stay-in-house order is in effect. But I will catch you all next time. Thank you very much, and enjoy your weekend. So yeah, I thank you guys so much for watching.